Thanks, everyone. My name is Shobhit. I'm the co-founder and chief revenue officer of Near. Very happy to be here today. I was listening in to the last few bits of the previous panel discussion, and I thought it was very fascinating, interesting that people are buying loungers and sliders $600. It's really a fascinating time. I wanted to talk about a couple of things today, which I'd highlight here in the beginning of the presentation. Data intelligence and consumer identity. And I'll unfold this and unpack this over the next few minutes. But before I get into the details, what I wanted to do was to make it a little interesting. I wanted to start with a few predictions from our side. I for one believe that for technology companies to innovate, especially ones that are really at the cutting edge, it's very important that we have a clear point of view or a hypothesis of what's going to happen in the next few years. And then you work really hard towards addressing those challenges and problems for your customers and for your partners. So I have 4 predictions here. Some of those might be pretty obvious. Some of those you may not agree with, but I hope that gets some of the ideas flowing. So to begin with the first one, this is a clear hypothesis that we have. The future of data is 1, decentralized, and 2, driven by intelligence. And again, I'll unpack this in the next few slides. But what I mean by decentralized is that we are coming out of a phase where the internet economy has been dominated by a few walled gardens, where there's very, very limited access to the data to outsiders, and that has obviously benefited the walled gardens, so to speak. But we are now entering a phase where we believe that the future in the next 10 to 15 years, we are going to see a shift happening where more and more organizations will have control to more data. And the access is not going to be just limited to a set of companies or a set of walled gardens. Data is going to be truly, truly decentralized. But what that also means is that the competitiveness is going to be driven by the access to data and what you do with this data, which brings me to intelligence, because data by itself is useful, but you can really unleash the value of it when you derive intelligence and you're able to act on it. So let me start with data itself. So control over data will define market leaders, and I'll use a slightly simplistic and maybe an oversimplistic view of this, but I hope you can relate to some of this in the context of your organizations. But when we think about revenue maximization, when we think about increasing profitability, these are broadly the 2 vectors that we think about. On the x-axis, you have the total addressable market, total number of customers that are out there that could use your products or services. On the y-axis, you have depth of customer data, which we believe is directly proportional to the revenue or the average revenue per user ARPU that you derive from every customer. So as an organization, you have some market share, you have a certain customer base today, and you have some data on those customers. Now that the data that you have in every customer is different. It's a distribution. Some of your customers extremely loyal, you have a lot of data on them. There's some others who are probably not as loyal as the others, and the data that you have on them is in comparison lesser. So it's a distribution. So the first thing, when you are as an organization thinking about your data strategy, these are the 2 vectors along which you have to think about. So the first thing is, how do I increase average revenue per user, or how do I increase lifetime value of my existing customers? And how do I get more data on my existing customers? The second thing is, how do I get more data on prospects or new customers? And that will help me increase my market share. And the organizations that find the right balance between these 2 are the ones that eventually become market leaders. So whether you are a market leader, whether you're trying to dethrone an incumbent, it's very, very important that you have clarity on which direction you want to go in. Do you want to go to the top first and then right? Do you want to go to the right first and then top? Do you want to do a combination? And that has to really inform a lot of your investment strategy, be it across data, across marketing, advertising, your product shelving, etc. So in summary, we believe data is going to be a key driver for growth, in organizations that are controlling their data and understanding their data are going to be in a very, very strong position, and they'll potentially be market leaders. They'll be able to maintain that market leadership position. We believe this world is the paradigm is going to shift from walled gardens to what I'd like to call safe gardens. Just because there are no walls doesn't mean the garden is not safe. It's built on customer privacy. It's built on the idea of collaboration and partnerships with multiple entities in the ecosystem that can be your partners. And it's not just built on this concept of holding all the data and just keeping it to yourself. And ultimately, all of this is only possible if you invest in the right data and the right strategy to acquiring data as well. And having been in this industry for over a decade, it's ironical that most organizations that have very, very sophisticated data strategy, they cannot answer these basic questions very clearly. So I think this is absolutely fundamental. This is a starting point. And then just to build on that, when you think about an average consumer, they have multiple identities and they have multiple touch points, and these are constantly getting more and more fragmented. So you have an average person spending time in the real world. They're going to your stores, they're going to competitor stores, they're going to stores of other merchants that are non-competing. They're also spending more and more time on digital because of COVID. One of the things it has done, which I'll talk about a little more, is that the consumption behavior has oscillated between offline and online. So people started going back to store, and then they've been stopped because of lockdowns, and they had to move to consumption online. And what it does is it generates multiple consumer identities. And it's very difficult for an organization to understand the whole picture of a consumer unless you really invest in additional data. So your own first party data is the absolute backbone, is the foundation of everything you build. But that itself is just not enough. You have to invest in additional data sets. And then finally, right data paired with the right tool sets is what gives you the right insights, and that's what drives business value. It won't surprise you. There's enough literature out there. This is not something that's just a presentation. You can see this. McKinsey did a fantastic research where they found that data-driven organizations are 23 times more likely to acquire customers, and they're 6 times more likely to retain these customers. And PwC did research where they found that the likelihood of you finding significant improvements in your decision making it's almost 3 times higher. So relying on data, gathering the right intelligence, executing on that in the right manner is going to have an impact that's not just a percentage improvement or incremental. It's actually orders of magnitude. We're looking at numbers which are orders of magnitude higher. That brings me to the second prediction, which is we are getting into an era alongside the fact that the data is going to be decentralized. We're also getting into an era where customer identity, a lot of which was built off of cookies and device IDs, that is starting to go away with Google's announcement of deprecating third-party cookies, changes that Apple is bringing in. So a unified and a persistent identifier is the way forward for every organization. You may choose to build it yourself. You may choose to partner with organizations that can help you build it. But one thing is clear: the traditional architecture and the identity stack of cookies and device IDs it's not sustainable. It is not going to go for long. So if you're someone that's building it, or if you have someone in your organization who's building it, this is the question you need to ask: how sustainable and scalable is it? And what is our plan when this ecosystem fundamentally shifts in the next 12 to 18 months? So an average customer is on email, is on mobile devices, is on phone number, using a certain phone number of the telecom operator, and all of these identities need to be tied together. And until you do this, it is going to be very, very difficult for you to be able to leverage the upcoming shift of a decentralized data ecosystem where you can build your own safeguards. Because if you don't have that single identity identifier for every customer, which is sustainable, persistent, you can't really stitch a lot of the data against that individual. And all of this obviously has to be built on privacy. I believe that another way to look at it is that the identity graph is the nervous system. Unless you have that, the full body will not work. The third one, Remus, if I don't mention COVID, customer behavior has fundamentally changed. We have, over the past 12 months across 20 plus countries, we've been closely looking at and monitoring data on how customers are shifting between online and offline. And there are few things that I've mentioned here. Number one, in terms of the shift in customer behavior, you see that discretionary shopping and has a lot of it has shifted and changed into buying of essentials. Now, it's not true for everyone, as someone on the previous panel said, that people are still buying very expensive items. So there is a segment of people that are going to continue doing that. But by and large, at scale, a lot of the discretionary shopping has moved into just more essentials, of buying essentials, and it has got a lot to do with the change in disposable income. The loyalties have shifted to new brands, and a lot of it is driven by support for local brands and businesses. And this is not just true in Singapore. This is happening in a lot of countries all over the world. And customers, because of the challenges of lockdown and quarantine and not being able to go out, and safety and wellness concerns, a lot of the consumption has shifted online. So we'll look at customer behavior on a risk spectrum. You see someone like an Alan here. He's a risk taker. He's young. He's absolutely fine, and he's okay to take a risk of starting to go out whenever the lockdown goes away, places open up. He wants to go and meet his friends and wants to go to the bar. On the other end of the spectrum, you have someone like a Vijay who, for multiple reasons, does not want to take risks to go out. He just wants to stay home. He just wants to order online and will not go out unless it's absolutely essential. And you have Anna in between. She's a balancer. She's someone who will not go out to a bar to meet her friends, but she doesn't mind going out for groceries and for some of the essentials. Now, when you think about each and every one of your customers, they are somewhere on the spectrum, and all of them are distributed across the spectrum. But the other interesting thing that we realized is that this is not just a function of an individual, it's also a function of time. What we've seen in the past 12 months is that there are countries and cities that have had difficult lockdowns. They've come out of it. They thought things were going to be back to normal, and you've had a second, third, fourth wave, and that is continuing to happen. And it's probably going to be a few months, quarters maybe, till things go back to or close to what they were earlier. And so you have to think about and look at every customer and where he or she is on that spectrum, and how are they oscillating depending on how things are in their region, in their territories. And that is very, very important to define how you engage with them. So if someone is risk averse, there's no point you expecting them to walk into your store. You want to drive them to your online storefront. There's someone who's a risk taker, and he's okay to come to your store. You want to make sure that you are giving them all the information they need in terms of safety and sanitization, etc. So that brings me to the fourth and the final prediction, and that's privacy can be quite overbearing for most organizations, and we've been dealing with it given the nature of our business for many years now. And I can tell you that in the years to come, we look back at this time and the past decade, particularly the past 3-4 years, we will know that this was a defining moment, and this is a new vector along which organizations can gain competitive advantage. There is tremendous change that's happened in the regulatory environment. There are about 2/3 of the countries have put some kind of Consumer Privacy Act in place, and almost half the organizations have had to update their cookie policy, and an overwhelming majority of them have had to update it at least once over the past year. And this frequency of updates is going to happen more and more. It, on the other hand, also leads to a lot of trust and brand equity for their customers. So there's enough research, and we've seen it ourselves, that more and more customers, their trust in the brand will increase or decrease depending on how that brand is handling privacy. And more than 70% organizations believe that privacy is going to improve their efficiency, agility, and innovation as well. So the takeaway here is that privacy is not something that you can outsource to your privacy or legal counsel. It's a mindset shift that has to occur across the organization, and it has to happen right at the top and all the way across functions, be it product, sales, go-to-market, technology, engineering, data science, analytics, operations. Every organization needs to think about this as one of the objective functions that they're working on. It's not just like you think about revenue, just like you think about profitability, just like you think about NPS. This is one of the core flags that you'll have to constantly think about and monitor. So you have to invest in it, and not just invest in this, but you also have to invest in the right partners who are investing in privacy, especially when you're looking at your data acquisition strategy. So I'm going to now just summarize all the, given those predictions, what it means for us to say that data intelligence is in action. So I'll just give a simple example in the near context and how we view this. From data to insights, intelligence, and how do you drive business value as an enterprise? Let's say you have organized your data across 2 dimensions. So let's start with all of your stores. You have a lot of data about your stores, some data potentially about your competitor stores, and you're looking at gaining more intelligence around it. What we can do is we can do a join based on the stores, based on your stores, physical store addresses, neighborhoods, zip codes, and we can provide you a lot of rich intelligence in terms of how many people are visiting there, where are they coming from, where are they going, what is the trade area like, what is the amount of time they're spending at your stores versus competitors, potentially a share of wallet by category. And this intelligence can help you drive business value in terms of what is the optimal location for me to open my new stores, how much intelligence can I gather from my competitors, what is the trade area from where my customers are coming, that is my addressable area per store. For CPG brands, supply chain optimization is a critical problem. How do I identify the right distributors that minimizes friction when I'm offloading my products into my strategic retailers? So that's one side of it. The other side of it is a people-based, a customer-based use. If you have a CRM or a loyalty database, we can sync the data at an email, at hashed email address, phone number level, and all of this is in a privacy consent framework. And then the enrichment can be done based on a record level in terms of their demography, what are the brands that they have affinity to, where do they live, where do they work, their online behavior, and this can help you define a lot of your customer engagement strategy, increasing lifetime value, measuring ROI on your investment. It can all of these can be poured into the prerequisite platforms, marketing activation platforms, visualization platforms. The data can be surfaced through those. And ultimately, depending on the industry, the use cases for the data are quite varied. Technology, media, telecom, you can use this to increase ad yield in a post-cookie world. You can use this to hyper-target your audience, increase ad viewability, maximize your data monetization. For a real estate company, you can use this to drive personalization. CPG clients can use it for supply chain optimization, increasing brand recall. Financial services can use this to understand their customers better, to build enhanced predictive lending models for their home loan products. So there are a ton of use cases that can be addressed by each industry. And it's very, very important that you start looking at it and thinking about it, going back to the first graph that I made, which is how do you get to that market leadership position? How do you need to think about your data, your overall data strategy, and deriving intelligence from it? So with that, I'm just going to summarize a little bit about us. Near is proudly headquartered in Singapore. It's a Singapore company, raised a total of $134 million, probably one of the fastest growing SaaS data businesses globally. We have headquarters all the way from LA and New York to Sydney in Australia. We're currently mining data on about 1.6 billion monthly active users, 44 plus countries, 70 million places, and very, very proud to be serving customers, some of which maybe at the event as well, all over the world. So with that, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to my colleagues and connect with me on LinkedIn. But thank you so much for your time.